Marvel's Daredevil is undoubtedly the best superhero television show I've seen, and it isn't close. I'm about 3 years too late to this, but I still wanted to show everyone just how much of an unfaltering masterpiece this show is. I'm not usually one to like these kinds of shows where they're dark and gritty, yet it's literally about a superhero, but somehow this show pulled it off and sucked me in. It's realistic and does it right, while feeling human and having funny and sweet moments, and always knows when to and when not to. And it's not just dick jokes in the middle of a dire situation. And with the recent inclusion of Daredevil in the official MCU canon, as well as all the Marvel's Netflix shows coming to Disney Plus, I think there's no time better than now to talk about how much I love this show. This entire video is nothing but a mix of minor and semi-major spoilers, so if you haven't watched the show and want to go in blind, this is your warning. But I won't be going into anything too specific, so if you want to leave and go watch it, now's your chance. Come back when you're done. My first praise of this season is going to be the way it builds this story up. It has a lot it needs to do, and it accomplishes even more. I went into this show being damn near blind on the Daredevil character. All I knew about him was that he was blind and was a friend of Spider-Man. So this show successfully drew me in and built a foundation for me, who knew nothing, and got me trapped in its glory. It grew a masterful world in this single neighborhood of New York City filled with characters to love. And all of these leading roles are stars in their own right. The man without fear, Matt Murdock himself, is obviously the biggest part of the show, and it's extremely hard not to love him. Charlie Cox is a fantastic actor I've never even heard of besides this show, and I think that's a shame. He lives, breathes, and sleeps being Matt Murdock, and you can tell. Outside of this, he loves the character, and his passion shines through, which helps him and his incredible acting ability. And of course, I love Foggy and Karen. Foggy comes off at first as just the comedic relief and a wingman kind of guy, and Karen is literally just a damsel in distress in the beginning, but both of them really grow and shine to show you that they aren't even close to those caricatures that you might pin them for. But as I was saying earlier, the way the story builds and grows, becoming more and more entangled as it spouts up, is incredible in this first season, because as it does, the characters and their actions grow and develop alongside it. This adds to the biggest thing that surprised me about this show, how real it feels. It's incredibly hard to make a show about a guy who can see using his hearing and smell feel real, but it does, and so well. It isn't just some guy with superpowers. All of these characters are people, very imperfect people, besides Foggy, and one of them just so happens to be very good at beating people up. And the why he is good at that gets explained too. This realism is one reason I honestly prefer his just black combat outfit to his official Daredevil suit. But even then, they still give a very solid and consistent explanation and obtaining of that suit. If I haven't said that every single one of these main characters can act yet, then I'm saying it now. I don't know if I've ever seen such consistently fantastic acting from a core group of characters in a TV series like this before. And I think the best example of this is in Season 1, coming from my favorite episode, Nelson v. Murdock. This is what I meant when I said Foggy wasn't just the comic relief, or an oaf. He is a very competent and caring guy, but he's also a human being, with emotions and feelings. He finds out his best friend is risking his life every single night, but it isn't just some "I'm worried about you, Matt" kind of argument, because this isn't some simple situation. Matt doing what he does puts Foggy and Karen at risk, and Matt has a very high risk of dying literally every night. He's also been lied to very directly the entire time they've known each other, because Matt isn't just a quote-unquote blind guy. This whole episode adds so much to each of their characters and sets up for many of the future conflicts. It's also one of the most emotional of the entire series, and it's just so fantastic, through and through. Of course, now I want to talk about Wilson Fisk. I think much more of his character should be left up to discuss in Season 3, but he is incredible from the moment he shows up. He isn't some otherworldly supervillain who can level a city. He doesn't even have any superpowers. He's just kind of strong. But despite that, he is one of the most menacing and terrifying villains I have seen put to screen. And along with that, he's incredibly nuanced and consistent. He isn't just evil. He loves, he grieves, he has people he cares for. But he also has this welling rage in him to where he won't hesitate to decapitate a man with a car door. Don't worry, we're going to talk much more about him later. Finally, one of my favorite moments in this season is the incredible speech Matt gives in episode 3. He talks about the facts, separating the right and the wrong, the questions that tether us to our humanity, the moral questions. This speech really just lays out the entirety of Matt's character in all 3 seasons. Ignoring the bits about the specific case he gave the speech in, you can see this line he's talking about. You can see him go through this. The line that sometimes becomes a blur, or is sometimes clear as day. That's what I mean. This clear through line you can see through all these seasons and episodes. The consistency of characters, and most importantly, with the themes. I think you'll see what I mean as we keep going through this video. Season 2 takes a slightly different approach, but that in no way means that it isn't still fantastic. In this season, one of my biggest praises I think that really comes to light is the fact that the show tells you a lot and tells its story without really having to force feed you anything. Every once in a while, yes, it kind of has to, but when it does, it's still done very well. Like, for example, when the Punisher tells Matt about his family and his story. It's like 5 minutes of only him talking, and in theory that's just an expository dump, but the combination of Jon Bernthal's amazing performance and the nature of this situation, it feels very natural and in place. Speaking of the Punisher, he was easily my favorite new addition and storyline of this season, and I'm sure many of you agree. I love the Punisher, obviously, but I also love the stuff involving his trial. Foggy shined here, and it really put Matt and Foggy's relationship to the test. Basically, every part of these episodes was incredibly intriguing to me. I just love Foggy so much. This season had 2 main coexisting plot points that interacted with each other, but in the end, remained pretty separate. The Hand/Elektra story and the Frank Castle/Mob story. And I have to start by saying this was handled really well. I will outright say I cared for the Punisher plot more, obviously, but that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the other one. And the 2 sides worked well together as the Nelson, Murdock, and Page group were involved in both, keeping it connected while the actual plot lines themselves didn't have to connect. I enjoyed Elektra a lot this season. She gave a lot for Matt and his backstory and gave a lot of added characterizations for Old Stick. I also enjoyed the Hand plot and the mysteries around it, specifically because I really liked Nobu in the first season, but overall, it came second to the main line of the Punisher. I was expecting the big wrap-up of the Punisher story and the blacksmith to be a reveal for the Hand and tie it in nicely, but it wasn't. And at first I was honestly disappointed, but then, once my favorite addition came in and saved the day, and the final fight with Maddie and Elektra, I thought it served really well. It was all really just a setup for the Punisher, which doesn't directly affect the main plot of our story, but again, Castle was so enjoyable, and it didn't take away from it even a little. Plus, obviously, the added conflict and characterization with Matt and Foggy and Karen. I do think the real feeling I praised the first season for gets brushed aside when it comes to the Hand plotline in this, but that's bound to happen with superheroes. But it does disappoint even just the tiniest bit. It's not a detriment. I still love this season, don't get me wrong. Finally, for this season, I loved the characterization. I think, at least for me, in light of the more standard superhero stuff, the parts that really shined for me were just the characters interacting. How everyone bounced off each other and how there's just such wildly different dynamics between everyone. And just because Matt and Karen are both defending Punisher, for example, doesn't mean they both have to like him or even agree with how they're defending him. All these characters are really their own people, none being any kind of caricature like I said earlier, and they're all just very human. Like, Karen really empathizes with the Punisher as she has taken a life before, granted in self-defense. This also comes back later as a way for her to deter Matt from going down that path, which I love. Again, I just love the connecting through lines between all these characters and seasons. And just Matt in general, really struggling with the line between his lawyer day job and nightly crime stopping. You can see the 2 sides seeping into each other, but not in any crazy way, at least so far, as that's safe for later. So I was told I needed to watch Defenders before starting Season 3, as it's kind of like a Season 2.5 for Maddie, which it is. And well, because I want this video to be a praisal for Matt Murdock and the Daredevil TV show, I don't really want to talk about the Defenders, because to be honest, I did not per se enjoy Defenders a lot. Don't get me wrong, it has nothing to do with the fact that I didn't watch any other shows because I loved Luke and Jessica, not him. But my problems were all based on the actual composition of the show, especially once the story started moving. But this story is very important for Matt and leads into season 3, so I can't really skip over it. Of course, Mr. Charlie absolutely saved this show for me from not making it a bad watch. I did enjoy this show mainly just for him. So all I'm really going to talk about this show is from Matt and his character. The way Matt acts makes me uncomfortable, but not because it's bad writing at all, but it is out of character, and that's on purpose. He's acting a little weird. He's feeding into his devil side too much after trying to completely throw it away and no longer having his support group. He's basically alone and he's straying from his path, especially once he finds out Elektra's back. I love how once Elektra comes back, you really feel like a different part of Matt we've never seen comes out, the darker side, almost entangled with his lust for her, the part we got a preview of before but nothing major. But now, in his desperation, now that he thinks he's alone, it comes out more. Having lost her once, he doesn't want to do that again, and it really brings out the darkness in him. That line gets blurred. The difference between right and wrong starts to become less clear to him. But towards the end of the show, he was back to old Matt, I think. He found friends, but he knew what he had to do, and I think he liked that outcome. It was a good medium. He wanted to at least give one more shot and save Elektra, as he had to stay behind. I don't think he felt bad because even if it wasn't true, he thought this was all he had left, really. He had to protect his city. Whatever I might say about Defenders, the way they handled his wrap-up of Elektra and also his duty as Daredevil and his protecting of the civilians is very well done, and I liked how they kind of put it together in one nice little bow. Overall, Defenders wasn't fantastic, but I do think this show did wonders to explore the darker sides of Matt, which makes his eventual building back up that much sweeter. Season 3 is without competition the best season. You know Defenders felt really weird to me, but as soon as Season 3 started, within 10 minutes I was in harder than when Season 2 ended. This season has everything I loved about the other seasons on steroids. This season is why I made this video. This season is some of the best television I think has ever been made. It is absolutely incredible. Before we get into the thematics and the story, I want to talk about how I am a big camera nerd. So the cinematography throughout this show blew me away, of course. There's so many beautiful shots, whether it be thematically or simply visually. They're scattered everywhere throughout. But this season held one of, if not the most impressive scenes I have ever seen. The hallway fight in episode 2 of season 1 was incredible and amazing, but that is nowhere close to season 3 episode 4. This is a 10-minute long, no-cut shot of Matt going from the nurse's office in a prison to the outside while a riot takes place throughout. And when asked, the director stated there were no hidden cuts. This is actually 10 minutes of uninterrupted and beautiful camera work, action, and acting. This scene by itself can show you how incredible the fight choreography always is in this show, and is one of its best qualities. But just simply nothing can touch how much of a spectacle this scene is. The lack of cuts or quick camera movements make the tension triple automatically. I could talk about this scene alone for a whole video just because it's that jaw-dropping. It's a spectacle and it shows the quality of which this show is willing to go to. It is gorgeous, intense, and insanely cool. Now, I really need to talk about Karen and Foggy in this season. These two add so much support and life to this show for completely different reasons. Foggy is this immovable rock. He always moves the plot forward in any way and just never falters. He's incredibly funny, incredibly sweet. I love everything about him. I love Foggy so much. But in this season, really, Karen was shining. The episode dedicated to her and her backstory was amazing, and I adore her and Matt. So many parallels could be drawn between her and Elektra and how they interact with Matt, but she is so much more than just some love interest to Matt. Although I do love them together. I loved Karen in all the seasons, but I loved how her story really comes to a head in this one. Her struggle is very intertwined with my favorite story in this season, though, being Matt's internal struggle. I love the time we take at the beginning to watch him crawl, tooth and nail, his way back up after his near-death experience. He struggles with his faith, himself, and this underlying self-hatred. Matt is such a complex yet clearly readable character, and the balance of that is so amazing to watch. And his internal struggle informs and parallels much of this season. But just like Punisher in the second season, we get introduced to another big comic book character, Bullseye, aka Agent Dex. I adored every second of him on screen. I have to say, at first I was worried. I knew they were trying to work in Bullseye, and I thought it was either going to take away from Kingpin, who deserved the entire spotlight, as well as I was worried about how they would adapt him at all. I can't say I know much about Bullseye in the comics, but I thought he was just another evil guy who was good at aiming. But that was not Wilson Bethel's Agent Dex. He was special. I loved the way they handled him and his psychopathic nature, and how they represented it and him through the music, framing, dialogue, and the themes. He's an incredibly damaged and broken man. His head just isn't screwed on right at all, and unlike the Punisher, I found it nearly impossible to sympathize with him in any way. He really does feel like this dangerous animal, that at any point he can throw the entire story off, which he definitely does. Except, of course, when Fisk is manipulating him. And at that point he just feels like a devil in his own right, a demon hunting down Matt and Karen. But of course, no one will ever touch Wilson Fisk. All the way from Season 1, even in Season 2 and the few episodes he appeared in, and all through Season 3, he stayed as intriguing and well written as the main character. He really is hard to put into words. He isn't a sympathetic villain, but he isn't a monster with just some evil plan. He's somewhere weirdly in the gray, of him truly believing in his cause, and his cause on the outside not even looking that terrible, and him being a murderous psychopath. Of course, with this, it's impossible to really see him as a man, more of a faraway mob boss, an obstacle to be overthrown. Well, that would be the case if not for Vanessa. Vanessa really just makes him human, makes him seem like a man. And if anything, I would say Vanessa is his only true weakness. The parallels between Matt and his respective two villains in this season are really some of my favorite parts. But more specifically, its resolution. His decision there at the end that single-handedly defines the line between him and the villains of this story. Despite Matt's horrible treatment of everyone, despite his mistakes, and despite the fact he made up his mind to kill Fisk, right at the end, he chooses, in all his rage and fury, at his most vulnerable point, to draw that line in front of himself and not kill. This scene is not only one of the most amazing and raw fight scenes ever in superhero media, but in that last bit where Matt declares himself to Fisk is the best scene in the show. It encompasses everything about Fisk, Matt, and all of the themes of the show into one single interaction. And the acting, specifically from Charlie Cox, is some of the best I have ever seen. Every movement he makes is filled with raw emotion and full of weight. It's simply incredible. He isn't acting. Everything he does just is Matt Murdock. Wilson too. And it was all a perfect way to end off these two stories.
But you don't get to destroy who I am. It beat you. I beat you.
Daredevil is a character whose moral compass guides him. Matt's morals inform damn near every decision made in this show, and it is all out on display. Whether those morals are pushed, challenged, corrupted, whatever, you still find yourself caring, rooting for him to get back up, to do what is right, because you know at the end of the day he will. He always gets back up. Even when beaten and broken, his fear is always overshadowed by his morality, his drive to do what is right. Even if he teeters close to the edge, he always comes back, and he gets back up. Matt Murdock is who he is because of his morals. The ending of the show is bright and optimistic. The best thing about this show, the fact it has such low lows and yet realistically takes us to highs that feel real. As this is a story about being and feeling human, not some superpowered god, but a man with a gift he wishes to use for good. I'm sad this show got cancelled when it did, and I hope we get to see much more of Charlie Cox's Daredevil in the MCU, besides secondary roles or cameos. But no matter what happens, the ending of this show as is such a perfect and incredibly well done end that I'd be happy to end on such a masterclass. Let's hope the future is bright for one of my new favorite superheroes, the Man Without Fear.